You know when you're watching a high school anime, or honestly any anime for that matter, and you see the scene of all the students in their classroom waiting for class to start, and as you're looking at them, you see 2 or 3 characters with like discolored hair, a funky hairstyle, or accessories that like no other character has, and then you just kind of go, yep, those are the main characters. That is a product of interesting character design choices, but primarily good ones, some bad ones. Hi, I'm Kalmaya or Hadley. I have no preference, and I also don't know how to do YouTube intros. If you're involved in the Webtoon space at all, then you're probably aware of Webtoon's upcoming contest in 2025, the Webtoon Legends contest. If you're not, then where have you been? It's been slapped at the top of their website for like 2 months. It's kind of a big deal for multiple reasons. One, because they haven't done a contest since their last one in 2022, the Call to Action contest, and 2, the prize pool. Yeah. And you know, the experience and stuff, whatever, blah blah. I'm a bit sad because I didn't participate in the last one. I don't know why, I just didn't. I think it's because I was working on my other webtoon, my magnum opus or whatever, and I didn't want to take a break on that to work on something else. Well, now that the time has come for another competition, my other comic is on indefinite hiatus, I'm much better at art and storytelling, and I have dreams, baby. I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna submit. But in order to submit to a comic contest, you kinda have to have a comic, or at least know what you're going to submit. Luckily for me, I know exactly what I'm going to submit. I've been cooking up this story in my brain for a little bit, so now all that is left is to design the characters. Yay, my favorite part. No, I actually love character design, I just don't do it very often. Anyways, onto the actual video, this intro is long enough. Today I'm going to be designing 3 characters for my webcomic Muti. I don't have a PNG tuber or whatever, anything like that set up right now, so y'all are just gonna have to deal with my little doodles over here on the corner for now. Anyways, I'll talk a little bit about the story and like what it's about throughout the video for context. Let's just start with the first character I'm taking a shot at designing. For some background, the comic is called Miri. It's a fantasy action story, and since I'm planning on submitting it to the Webtoon 2025 contest, I'll be submitting it to the most epic category, which is a bit scary because I've not drawn a whole ton of action sequences before, but I think it'll be a good challenge for my artistic abilities. Here's the summary for my comic. After waking up on a strange island with no memories, a young girl named Yuri and her unlikely ally, a shady half-demon named Lyre, are thrusted into the role of saving the island and its inhabitants from a dangerous pollution and uncovering secrets hiding in the island, as well as in themselves, to stop a repeating cycle that brings about certain doom. Yeah, that's sort of the gist of it. Obviously, this isn't going to be the official description or anything, but just a little explanation for you guys. The character I'm designing now is Lyre, the aforementioned shady half-demon. I usually start out my character designs by gathering references. I tend to make character designs by just smashing together a bunch of tropes or visually interesting or appealing design aspects of other characters that I like and then kind of make them my own. Pinterest is usually my go-to place for finding references for everything. I know a lot of people don't like it because of the AI and stuff, but I've had my Pinterest account for probably 9 years and I've built that sucker brick by brick. I'm not even kidding. I have saved almost 16,000 pins. I don't get much AI, man. I have an entire Pinterest board dedicated to cool character designs I like with over 600 pins on it, so I usually scroll through that to get ideas. Or if I already have an idea of what I want, I kind of just search directly into the website, like typing in red suits or black hair or something. I also tend to make character mood boards beforehand, so I can really get a good idea of the general vibe and aesthetic of the character I'm designing. It also helps me get story beat ideas for their character to use in the actual story. Poor Lyre, his board is very bare bones. Lyre's reference page consists mainly of actual design ideas I liked and wanted to implement with him, and you know, it also helps to have a good idea of who the character you're designing actually is. For Lyre, I already had that stuff figured out. This whole designing part was really just throwing all my ideas into a blender and seeing what milkshake comes out. I tend to start with a quick rough sketch of the pose and shape just to make the actual sketching process a little easier for me. I've always struggled so much drawing men's head shapes, so I spent quite a minute trying to draw his, and unfortunately for me, I have a lot of male characters in my story, so that's awesome. Same struggle goes for his legs and feet. I don't know why, but feet kill me. They just absolutely kill me, especially when it comes to shoes. Usually if I mess around for a couple minutes, I can make everything look moderately okay, even like hands, but not feet. I would cut feet off of every character I had if I could. I'm not even kidding, they're like the bane of my existence. This drawing was also my first time using my drawing display tablet in probably like 3 years, so I was kind of getting used to using that again this whole time. I'd been away at college and been mainly using my iPad to draw just because it's easier and more transportable than a whole drawing tablet and PC setup, so it was kind of different to try and get back into using my display tablet, but honestly I love it so much more than my iPad. If you just use an iPad, I highly suggest trying out a display drawing tablet. They're awesome. When designing a character, shape language is incredibly important to me, so is a clear and recognizable silhouette, which is why I usually don't put my characters in crazy or fun poses while designing them. Silhouettes in general are just really important. I mean, you can tell who this character is just by their silhouette. That's right, it's our Lord and Savior. Good shapes and good silhouettes tend to go hand in hand. If I had the time, I'd probably do 20 to 30 different drawings of just silhouettes in order to find something very unique and recognizable, but unfortunately I don't, so I just did one single drawing and kinda YOLO'd it. Because of Lyre's overall character and personality, as well as the message I want to send to the viewer, I made sure to make him very triangular and pointy. I want him to come off as a possible threat, but not quite evil. You'll see I added a lot of sharp and angular shapes into a design, like his overall body shape, his hair, his vest, his shoes, even the little design on his sword, but that also has, like, lore purposes, so. Also, now I realize why I don't do speed paints often, because look at how much I zoom in and out. Like, bro, I can barely tell what is going on. Anyways, back to shapes. Knowing where to add certain shapes and where to add others can be really beneficial in portraying different messages to your audience about your characters. If I made his hair very fluffy and curly and had his ears rounded and then kept everything else pointy like his sword and clothes, it could give the audience the idea that he himself isn't a threat, but he's trying to portray himself as such, because of the fact that he dresses sharply but the organic parts of him are not. These are definitely important things to think about, but honestly, I don't think many designers think about the fine details while designing, but kind of just incorporate them after certain stages, like the silhouette stage or the sketching stage. It's more so they make a bunch of designs and find ways to interpret them that push their narrative. Being a designer in any sense is basically a lot of BSing everyone around you. I would know. I'm a graphic designer, fun fact. Lyre's character has a lot of inspirations. I think the best way to describe him would be probably like Reagan from Mob Psycho mixed with like a 15-year-old emo kid from 2010 who hates everyone. His whole vibe is very standoffish and sarcastic, but he also thinks he's like the most amazing thing on the planet and spends a good portion of the story deceiving just about everyone to accomplish his goals. Obviously, I don't want to spoil the story or his character, as understanding who these characters are and why they are the way they are is a large part of the story and experience, so I'm kind of beating around the bush here. I'd consider him the second main character right after Muty, and they spend a majority of the story together, so you'll see a lot of this dude. I like to take my favorite tropes and characters from other stories and media and kind of make them my own. I think that is probably one of the easiest and most success guaranteed ways to make a good character, but obviously you don't want to straight up steal the character, which is why it's important to add your own ideas and twists to them. Like my original idea for Lyre was essentially just a Reagan copy. I mean, a little different, but then I felt it didn't quite fit with the story or the ideas I had with Lyre, so I made him emo. See, problem solved. Lyre is a species in my story called a Valper. Essentially, they're like a mix between a demon and a vampire. However, demons and vampires don't exist in my story, so Valpers are kind of their own thing, if that makes sense. I took basically the prominent features and attributes of both and made them smash to make one species baby. Horns and fangs are like the biggest ones, and you'll see as we get towards the end that I literally almost forgot to give him horns until the actual last minute. The Valper's horns sort of determine the status of each other in their little species circle, and attributes to how much power they have both socially and magically. Because Lyre's horns were so small, he was kinda tossed to the side and considered a joke among his species, leaving him to have to resort to sketchy methods in order to make ends meet. Add on the fact that Valpers are already considered a very unliked and dangerous species despite their importance to the overall health of the island, he's not been treated very well throughout his life. He ended up developing a rather sarcastic and sly personality because of the things and people he exposed himself to. He's been around for a really long time as a Valpers, and maybe only like one other species tend to live a couple hundred years, rather than most like others living a normal lifespan based on, you know, whatever real life species I kind of base them on, like humans or, I don't know, dolphins or whatever. From his maybe 700 years of living, he's only really been able to spend like 400 of them actually living, if that makes sense. The other 300 he's been trapped inside of a book. Yeah, that's a whole plot point. But from his experience, he's learned quite a bit when it comes to manipulating people and getting his way. He tends to think that people other than Valpers are very dumb and gullible and uncaring, since no one ever seems to reach out to him when he needed it. Or at least as far as he can remember. Oh, and he also absolutely does not like kids at all, which is unfortunate for him considering he's stuck with Miri, who is a preteen, for like the entire time, so that's pretty awesome. When it comes to Lyra's color palette, I blew through it pretty quickly because I had already sort of designed him before going into this drawing. Well, I mean, kind of, but not really. In his original design, he was actually a zombie. He had like grayish green skin and he was like way uglier. Then I remembered what platform I'm posting this comic to and remembered I like drawing hot guys and changed him up real quick. Also, just felt like his old design was really unoriginal and not quite unique, especially since I used like 0 references for it. And if I'm just using my brain, I'm really not that skilled at character design. I already knew I wanted him to have like a red, black, and white color palette, so it was pretty easy for me to knock that out of the way. For Lyra's drawing in particular, I spent a long time messing around with like shading and lighting. I tried my best to draw these in like a similar way to the way I draw my actual comic. However, I took way too long on Lyra, like way too long. By the time I was done, I had spent like a little over 4 hours on him, which is kind of ridiculous. Really ridiculous, actually. But I'm blaming the quarter of that time on me just screwing off and trying to remember all of the shortcut keys on my drawing tablet. In the end, this is how he turned out. I'm really happy with it, and I think he looks great. In the end, I did end up forgetting a design aspect that is literally a driving force behind his character, but I'll just add it in later because I'm way too lazy to do it right now. The next character that I'm designing is a very important one as well, but he isn't seen much in the beginning of the story. His name's Seven. For the next 2 characters, I ended up putting the reference images I collected for some inspiration on a different tab on another monitor just because I felt like having them open in the same screen I was drawing on took up too much room. But I'll put a little picture of it up here so you can see like some of the inspirations. Seven is a really intriguing character to me, both because of his personality and his motives, and probably he's one of my favorites, if not my favorite character in my whole comic. I think I portrayed him well in the end, but he's a very kind and gentle dude and has a lot of love for everything and everyone around him. And I really wanted to portray that along with his almost like wet dog character type in his design. I don't really know how else to explain it, but he just seems like a wet dog who got caught rolling around in a puddle to me. He's like droopy, shivering, ashamed, and uncomfortable. Ugh, I could yap about this man all day, but that would be major spoilers considering his importance to the story, so I can't do that. I started off with a messy thumbnail again, but this time I decided to take a bit of a different approach to how I was going to sketch him out to see if I could cut off some time. It was the next day when I started drawing him, and I didn't want to spend the entire day drawing these designs, so instead of doing like 2 to 3 sketches, I really just did 1 and didn't bother drawing most of the body unless it was visible and not hidden by clothing. It made his pose look a little stiff in the end, but honestly it did save me a lot more time, so I can't complain too much. I made sure to stick with very curved and long and flowing lines in the design to keep a unthreatening feeling about him. And give him glasses, because what is a beautiful long-haired blonde man without his glasses? Let's be honest. Glasses are like one of the most unthreatening character design aspects. I don't know why, but they just are. I also absolutely love character designs that have these sort of like droopy eyes, and so I wanted to try and incorporate that into his design as well. I think it looked great. Also, can we talk about how underrated the liquefy tool is? I mean, my whole life was changed when I discovered how to actually work it, because what do you mean? I don't have to redraw this entire part of his head or leg, and I can just liquefy it over a little bit. Life-changing. Seven is really big about books, so I made sure to give him a book, especially because that is a large plot point of his character. Yeah, books are a large plot point, okay. I don't know, just don't worry about it. I've noticed that my character designs tend to come out looking better if I limit the color palette, and I think that works especially well for this story in particular. As you'll notice throughout these designs, I use black quite a bit and tend to stick with maybe like 1 or 2 accent colors. I think it works well because then those characters tend to get associated with whatever their accent color is, and it can, once again, portray certain messages to the audience. I also do have plot reasons for that. In my story, the island the characters live on is split into 3 sectors, and each sector has its own dedicated color palette, also attributing to the character's own color palette. Sector 1's colors are pinks, purples, blues, and basically any muted colors or pastels. Sector 2's colors are reds, oranges, blacks, greens, and neons. And Sector 3's colors are blues, grays, whites, and blacks. It feels a little cliche, but part of my story is exploring those cliches and the boundaries they place the narrative into, so the cliches are kind of fitting. Keeping Seven's colors blue was really important to me, and I really like the idea of his hair and skin being a very similar contrast, just because I like that as a stylistic choice. Plus, it's kind of how I imagined him from the beginning, Seven's character is associated a lot with like snow and winter and the cold to me, so having a very pale complexion in general was just always something I've kind of pictured in my head. I wanted him to seem almost like he had a constant cold as well. That's why I gave him so much blush. I think it's lore accurate, as well as just like a silly little design choice, I don't know. I always like to give my characters kind of like one or two aspects that are very like unique specifically to them. It kind of helps the audience remember them a little better. I also gave him this fun little glowing effect for the back of his hair. It makes him seem almost ethereal, which is also lore accurate. When I submit my episodes for the contest, you only see him for like half an episode and then he kind of dips. But I feel like he's the easiest character for me to portray visually, as well as write dialogue for, just because I feel like this man is like so deep in my artistic soul. The majestic and ethereal vibe to him is like one of my favorite aspects of him. When I shaded Seven, I kind of also did a little bit of a different approach. When I shade like normal illustrations, I tend to just fill the entire thing with a multiply layer and then carve out the light. And I kind of tried to do the same here, but honestly, it kind of takes me a lot longer than just adding shadows, but I also think it helps create more depth and form when I do that, because oftentimes when I just add shadows where I think they'll go, they aren't right, or it just doesn't quite look correct. So, I don't know. I still gotta figure that one out too. Even though Miri isn't like my magnum opus or anything, I still really do like these characters and I want to see them come into fruition, so I'm excited to post the episode and hear what everybody thinks. Anyways, this is how he turned out in the end. For some reason, I forgot to change the file's resolution before I started drawing and then had to scale it up once I finished, so sorry if he seems a tad bit blurry when I show the finished image. I fixed it in the next one. But anyways, here is the boy. Love him. I managed to cut down my time quite a bit on this one, which is nice. Instead of like 4 hours, it only took me like 3, which is a big improvement, but I really wanted to see if I could cut my 4-hour time in half, so 2 hours is my goal for the next one. Oh, and by the way, I'd love to hear what you guys think about each design, or if you have any questions about my process or the characters, definitely ask. I would be very excited to hear your thoughts on these guys. Moving on to the third and final character design, we have Nora. A girl, yay, yippee! Boo, get these stinky men out of here. I think I had the best time with Nora's design, just because she's not a huge prominent character like Seven and Lyre, so I felt I could have a bit of fun with her design. Like the previous one, I put her design inspirations on another page. I'll put a little pic of it here now. Nora's design took me the least amount of time, primarily because I'm much more efficient at drawing women than men, and because I think I was finally getting into the groove of the process. It only took me just over 2 hours, like just a few minutes over 2 hours, which I'm gonna count as having my time, so yay. Sketching usually takes me the longest, like sketching is half of my process time. So if I can learn to cut that down, I think I'm gonna be just fine when I draw in this style, so I'm gonna have to work on that. For now, it definitely takes me too long. I think if I utilize things like 3D assets and stuff, I'll probably be fine. Like I said, Nora isn't necessarily a huge prominent character, but her presence does sort of haunt the main character, I guess, and a few other characters for a while. She's primarily only in the comic for the first few episodes, and then we don't see her really at all until maybe the latter half. Nora is the librarian of the town Seaside, a small town in the first sector where the main character Miri wakes up at the beginning of the comic. Nora has experienced firsthand the atrocities of the pollution and the creatures, monsters called Whisperers, it creates when being touched, as she actually lost a lot of her family to such. So because of that, she has a deep desire to see the myth that explains how the island will be saved come true. In the story, there's a sort of myth that was passed down for centuries over all the cycles of the island that most people don't believe in anymore, except for a spare few like Nora. The myth essentially talks about what will save their island from the repeating cycle of destruction, and Nora's tasked with guarding said thing that will save the island. However, she also believes that there would have to be a person involved, not just the object will save the island, and she believes that person is Miri. She ends up watching over Miri after she's dragged back to their house and they realize she's lost her memories. Nora sort of takes it upon herself to establish Miri's presence in the story and her motives. After the two of them spend some time together, Nora gets a bit suspicious of Miri's actual identity and ends up setting the entire plot in motion trying to help Miri remember who she is. I wanted her to give off a sort of big sister and librarian vibe, as well as just have an overall cute design, because I love me a cute girl design. Like, show me a cute girl design in a dress with ruffles and I'm sold, okay? I wanted her to feel comforting and strong, but also have a bit of an insecure and unsure side to her. Her personality is very kind and dutiful. She deeply cares about the little family she has left and makes sure to keep a happy face for them, particularly for her younger brother. He's also in the story about the same amount as her, but I feel like he doesn't quite have the same importance to the story as she does, so I'm not super worried about his character design, though I do already have a bit of a design in mind for him. I also do have a design for the main character and one other character designed already. Maybe I'll put a little picture of them up here so you guys can see them. I think they're really fun. When it comes to the design style of all my characters for the story, I'm aiming for a bit of a mix between like VKE fashion, old gothic, and like sci-fi futuristic style. The sci-fi part isn't really noticeable in these characters, but it's definitely more prominent in some of my other ones, especially because fashion varies based on each sector as well as species and personal preference. I feel like VK's inspired style is very noticeable with Nora, which I really like. Even though my comic is fantasy, I wanted to stay away from falling into classic fantasy visual tropes of just using the modern interpretation of medieval or Renaissance styled clothing that you see in basically every single fantasy manhwa. You know the clothes. They all look like princess gowns and big fancy suits and, you know, all that stuff. Even though some of them are pretty, I usually find myself being bored by their character designs. They just don't stick out to me in any way, nor are they really memorable. Their design and fashion choices all just kind of look the same, and they don't really have anything that is visually super interesting. I usually end up forgetting what character is what. I don't know, it's just not my favorite choice. A lot of times with that kind of trope, characters don't have their own sense of style, which I really don't like. I like my characters to be able to show, you know, their personality through clothing. If you're going to do fantasy, go all out. That's my thoughts anyways. At this point, I was getting kind of tired of drawing because I'd spent like all day drawing. So I took a break for an hour or so, showered, I made dinner, and I played with my cat for a while. When I came back, apparently instead of clicking unpause recording, I clicked stop recording, and I ended up not recording the entire coloring process of her design. So, which is really sad because I had a lot of fun messing around with her colors. I think her like color palette is probably one of my favorites so far. She actually started out green and then I changed my mind and made her purple, which you can see when it violently cuts to the fully colored version of her. The reason she has this color palette is because she is from the first sector and, you know, their color palette is greens, purples, pinks, etc. And it also just kind of fits with their beachy seaside vibe. Her little pattern on her jacket and leg warmers I think was a really cute touch to her design. Like, I really love it. I also really like designing her eyes. There's just something kind of magical looking about them. Same with sevens, but I don't know. Purple is my favorite color, so maybe I'm just a little biased here. In the end, someone told me she kind of looks like Hinata from Naruto, which, I mean, I can definitely see. Someone else told me she looked like a human version of Twilight Sparkle. That's another one I can definitely see. I think there's just a lot of characters with dark hair and purple color palettes. To me, she kind of ended up looking like Aphmau. I really think the glasses also contribute to that. Anyways, I think she turned out really cute in the end. I gave her glasses as well because I'm just a huge sucker for characters with glasses. Plus she is a librarian and that is a bit of a stereotype, so I figured why not give it to her? And here I am lining them all up so you can get a good look at them together. I think they all turned out really nice. Characters can be really intimidating to design, especially if you're not very familiar with how to do it. But I really think if you like just have fun and use your artistic knowledge like as best as you can usually come up with something at least half decent. So yeah, let me know what you guys think and keep an eye out for my comic in March on Webtoon. I'll probably make a little announcement here about it, so if you subscribe you'll see the announcement probably. I'll also post about it on like my other socials like Instagram and probably like Twitter and stuff. So if you follow me there you'll probably see it as well. I'm gonna hopefully make a few more videos about this. I don't know, we'll see. If you have any ideas for videos I can make, please let me know. I would like to know, please. Anyways, like and subscribe. Bye.